I was asked to write about this book a little bit. It seemed another of those, panoramic histories of mankind which entail going into prehistory, something which we can only speculate about. I wasn't very pleased about it, but the book developed and I found quite a lot of points of interest in it. I thought you might find some points of controversy as well. And my interest is more in the second book than in the first one. The first one is a history. You might agree with aspects of it, or you might not. But the second one talks about the future. Now, futurism is a very shaky sort of science altogether. It's sort of based upon logical developments that you see today, and you think that these will continue into the future. At least in linguistics, we say we don't talk about the future because it hasn't taken place yet, so we don't know what's going to happen there. Nevertheless, some trends are visible. Now, I hear that my ancestors lived only 35 years. Oh, you said no, 70 years and 10. I've been living on borrowed time for a long time. I think I did that. But I think if you look at the Hebrew Bible, all of us are infants here. Absolute bawling infants. There's one gent who lived 969 years. Methuselah. And you talk about 800 years, 700 years, we're nothing. We're rubbish. We're infants. So I'm just wondering, if you lived that long, well, I don't know, I can't imagine anything like that. So, anyhow, what are we to say about our own species? I wrote a very long poem, a sort of Miltonic kind of poem about paradise restored, and I did it in the Miltonic vein. And it was really the end of the species, end of us, out, gone. And that is why I called it Paradise Restored, because we're a very, very troublesome species here. We've, without intending to, we've simply ravaged the world. I think there's no other word for it. I come from a third world country where you press the button and maybe the light comes on, maybe it doesn't come on. You open a tap and maybe water comes out. Once a frog came out. Yes, this is true. And you come to a relatively developed country like this, and, well, I never fail to be amazed when I open the tap and water comes out. I mean, it's a surprising sort of thing. But you've got the higgledy-piggledy kind of life of the third world, and you've got this bureaucratic, ordered life, especially of the Germanic first world, let me call it that. Not so much the Latin first world, but the Germanic one, yes. So which is better, which is worse? This is getting more and more ordered, more and more regulated, more and more, shall I, bureaucratized. Is this good or is it bad? I truly don't know. I've stumbled through life in a kind of uncomprehending daze. I'm now in my 80s. And I don't know, some of the things we call progress and improvements are not necessarily so. Anyhow, we find Harari has adopted the current scientific account about prehistory. The beginning of time, this Big Bang. Now, it's a leap of faith, the Big Bang, either as a scientific proposition or, as a creationist might say, well, out of nothing, suddenly everything Isn't this a bit difficult to believe? And yet, what are the alternatives? I don't know. That there is another cause behind that, and it can go on and on. I'd rather not get into that. But there are controversial points here which he just seems to assume are correct. Now, this was pointed out, so I shan't labour the point, but he just sort of asserts it as irrefutable truth. Now, that might not be so. When we go into prehistory, it's all speculation. We don't really know. Beginnings of the human race, where did they say in Africa? Now there are other theories that it might be other parts of the world, and it talks about the Neanderthal, and if you're European, you have quite a bit of Neanderthal in you, from about 4 to 7%. If you're Asian, you have about 3 to 4%, and if you're African, you haven't got it at all. You haven't got Neanderthal in you at all. But the rest of us, yes, we've got that. Another Homo, not this Homo, not the so-called Sapiens Homo. We rather like ourselves, we call ourselves wise. We're probably Homo stupidus as well. But this sweep of history, well, I suppose, what can you do? That's just one book. You can't put all history into this. So let's not be too mean about that. Well, what we've got in the world today, he talks about the ferocious grip that group systems and ever-advancing technologies. There's hardly anything we do nowadays which is not a technology. The stupid thing in front of me, and this the stuff I've got hanging on my body. It's all technology, and it's sort of overtaken us. Is there anything we do without it? Tell me, I don't know. But the grip on people, we're not free. We are not really allowed to think. You could be a hopeful theocrat, I don't know. Or you could be a mindless religionist. You come across people blind religion, no question asked. You've got puzzled agnostics, I think, some here. You've got impatient pragmatists also. Get on with it, what are you wasting time for? You've got contentious atheists. You're talking rubbish. Well, you don't know anything about anything, yes? Exploitative capitalists, yes, with any number. Dictatorial communists, maybe. Or idealistic socialists, which I don't like belonging to any kind of ism, but if there is one, I put myself in there. And behind all that, as Manisha pointed out, there is this ever-present danger of war, and as you pointed out, the strange spectacle of this wise human murdering as many of his own species as he can, in the belief that if he is still standing at the end, his worldview is somehow vindicated, which of course is nonsense. But can you tell that to the person who has the gun? I don't know. He's the one who calls the shots. Dr. Fazana was talking about human rights and things. There's no rights. We don't have any rights. There is still only one right, and that is
might is right.
Might is right. And I'm sorry to say that this is still the operative principle in the world. So I don't know whether we moved ahead really. But anyhow, Stephen Hawking, who was it who mentioned that we have about 1,000 years more? Some people say that that's very generous. It might be finished in a couple of hundred years, but let's see how it goes. We also end up on the garbage dumps of time, like those great big animals that once walked around here. And the historical developments that rapidly changed came from being one unexceptional species among many, probably we still are, to his current status as undisputed world leader, as was pointed out. It might look very dramatic, but it contains the seeds of his own destruction. Agriculture, that so-called great, what shall you call it, a developmental step that took place sometime 10 to 12,000 years, probably in the Middle East area, and spread rather rapidly around other parts of the world. According to Harari, it's a step forward, but a simultaneous sort of disaster implied in it. It led to the wild proliferation of the species. We were small groups of berry eaters, and maybe if we caught an animal once in a while, we ate it. I know the Dr. Fazana would dislike that idea, but our ancestors were probably meat eaters as well. Creatures of opportunity, I suppose. Go 7 days without anything to eat and then gorge themselves crazy if they manage to get food and that sort of thing. This is what it probably was at that time. But suddenly, because of agriculture, there are millions and millions of people. And the millions, the more people you have, the more people you have. Why? Because you get this exponential thing that more people produce more people and more people and more people. It goes this way. Not this way, but sort of this way. And that's how we got 7 billion today. My goodness, we got 7 billion. I don't even know what 1 million is. Well, teachers are poor. Million is a colossal amount. Billion, I have the vaguest idea what a billion is. I know it's a very, very large thing. They have it into nationhood, corporate living, socio-political systems. We love our systems and we think they're all infallible, and they're all fallible. All of them are fallible. And fictive narratives, we love these also. We're pretty good at this sort of stuff, creating. I think my subject is linguistics, and we talk about language. Language is a tremendous thing. We've recreated a second world of symbols for this world. But we've also, as long as it is linked with this world, language is pretty good. But language is now free of this world, and it sort of romanticizes about other things. It goes into abstracts. How can I explain that? Language is a tremendous advantage and a god-awful disadvantage at the center. It makes us stupid. It makes us very clever, and it makes us stupid. We're both these things simultaneously, and maybe it's because of language, human language. I don't know. We can't go into that in great detail. Harari doesn't. He talks about language, but well, I think in a rather superficial manner, possibly. But what we call our humanness might rest quite heavily on language. Probably our creativity also rests on this ability of language to go beyond the concrete. So long as I'm talking about concrete things, there's not much problem there. But it's this ability to go into areas which are no longer concrete, the abstract. And this is where I can give you any kind of fiction I like. I can create all sorts of things that do not really exist. And if I'm tough enough and strong enough, and if I have enough charisma for it, I can make you believe it. And if I'm tough enough and I've got enough by way of social power behind me, I can punish you if you don't believe it. So this is one aspect of life which I think we probably don't talk enough about, but language is very useful and very dangerous at the same time. So anyhow, we talk about science. Obviously Harari ascribes to science. Science, yes, since the 19th century especially, it is based on evidence, it is based on accurate analysis. It does not talk about abstracts. It talks about things that can be measured and weighed and this sort of thing. So therefore science, and out of science has come a lot that we see around us today. There is no doubt about it. As Russell said a long time ago, that science has the ability to prove itself. And if it can't, then it keeps the matter open. It doesn't assert. It will hypothesize. It will test its own assumptions. And if those assumptions don't come out as it expected them to, then it keeps the matter open. So in a sense, it was a great step forward, a huge step forward. But people like Derrida, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he calls science a kind